What it do, YouTube? It's your boy Polo West, and I'm in the new spot, the Merc Park. We getting busy with it. It's Thursday morning, February 16, 15, 16. Yeah, I just grabbed this book, How to Be Stoic, by Massimino Pigalucci. You hear me? So I was finna just get this one going. How to be stoic. Chapter 1, The Unstraightforward Path. Midway upon the journey of our life, I found myself within a dark forest, for the straightforward pathway had been lost. Dante, The Divine Comedy. So that was a quote. You start with the quote, and you come to the chapter. In every culture we know of, whether it's secular or religious, ethnically diverse or not, the question of how to live is central. How should we handle life's challenges and vicissitudes? How should we conduct ourselves in the world and treat others? And the ultimate question, how do we best prepare for the final test of our chapter, the moment when we die? The numerous religions and philosophies that have been devised over human history to address these issues offer answers ranging from the mystical to the hyper-rational. Recently, even science has gotten into the business with an onslaught of technical papers and popular books on happiness and how to achieve it, accompanied by the obligatory brain scans displaying your brain on whatever it is that may increase or decrease your satisfaction with life. Correspondingly, the tools to seek answers to existential questions vary as much as the approach that have been used. From sacred texts to deep meditation, from philosophical arguments to scientific experiments, the resulting panorama is truly astounding and reflects both the creativity of the human spirit and the urgency that we obviously attach to inquiries into meaning and purpose. You can embrace any of a large variety of options within the Judeo-Christian Islamic religions, for instance, or choose one of the panoply of schools of Buddhism, or opt instead for Taoism or Confucianism, among many others. If philosophy, rather than religion, is your cup of tea, then you can turn to existentialism, secular humanism, secular Buddhism, ethical culture, and so forth. Or you can arrive instead at the conclusion that there is no meaning. Indeed, the very search for it is meaningless, and embrace a happy sort of nihilism. Yes, there is such a thing. For my part, I've become a stoic. I do not mean that I have started keeping a stiff upper lip and suppressing my emotions, as much as I love the character of Mr. Spock from Star Trek. These traits represent two of the most common misconceptions about what it means to be stoic. In reality, stoicism is not about suppressing or hiding emotions. Rather, it is about acknowledging our emotions, reflecting on what causes them, and redirecting them for our own good. It is also about keeping in mind what is and what is not under our control. focusing our efforts on the former and not wasting them on the latter. It is about practicing virtue and excellence and navigating the world to the best of our abilities while being mindful of the moral dimensions of all our actions. As I explained in this book, in practice, Stoicism involves a dynamic combination of reflecting on theoretical precepts, reading inspirational texts, and engaging in meditation, mindfulness, and other spiritual exercises. One of the key tenets of Stoicism is that we ought to recognize and take seriously the difference between what we can and cannot master. This distinction, also made by some Buddhist doctrines, is often taken to indicate a tendency of Stoics to withdraw from social engagement and public life. But a closer look at both Stoic writings and, more importantly, the lives of famous Stoics will dispel this impression. Stoicism was very much a philosophy of social engagement and encouraged love for all humankind and nature as well. It is apparently contradictory tension between the advice to focus on one's thoughts and the social dimension of Stoicism that drew me into the practice. I arrived at Stoicism not on my way to Damascus, but through a combination of cultural happenstance, life's vicissitudes, and deliberate philosophical choice. In retrospect, it seems inevitable that my path would eventually lead me to Stoics. Raised in Rome, I have considered Stoicism part of my cultural heritage ever since I studied ancient Greek and Roman history and philosophy in high school. Although it wasn't until recently that I sought to make its principles part of my everyday life, I am by profession a scientist and philosopher. And I have therefore always been inclined to seek more coherent ways to understand the world through science and better choices for living my life through philosophy. A few years ago, I wrote a book, Answers for Aristotle: How Science and Philosophy Can Lead Us to a More Meaningful Life, in which I explored such a framework, which I called sci-fi. The basic approach was to combine the ancient idea of virtue ethics, which focuses on character development and the pursuit of personal excellence, as the pillars providing meaning to our lives, with the latest that the natural and social science tell us about human nature and how we work, fail, and learn. As it happened, this was only the beginning of my journey toward philosophical self-awareness. Something else was going on at the time that made me pause and reflect. I have not been a religious person since my teenage years. I was prompted to leave Catholicism in part by reading Bertrand Russell's famous Why Am I Not a Christian in high school. And as such, I have been on my own in dealing with questions of where my morals and the meaning of life come from. I take it that an increasing number of people in the United States and across the world find themselves facing a similar conundrum. While sympathetic to the idea that lack of religion affiliation should be just as acceptable a choice of life as any religious one, and strongly supportive of the constitutional separation of church and state in the United States and elsewhere, I have also grown increasingly dissatisfied with, make that downright irritated by, the intolerant anger of the so-called new atheists. represented by Richard Dawkins and Sam Harris, among others. Although public criticism of religion or of any idea is the staple of a healthy democratic society, people don't respond very well to being belittled and insulted. On this point, the Stoic philosopher Epictetus clearly agrees with me, all the while displaying his characteristic sense of humor. At this point, you run the risk of him saying, "What business is that of yours, sir? What are you to me?" Pester him further, and he is liable to punch you in the nose. I myself was once keen for this sort of discourse until I met with just such a reception. There are, of course, alternatives to the new atheism if you want to pursue a non-religious approach to life, including secular Buddhism and secular humanism. Yet these two paths, the two major ones on offer for those seeking a meaningful secular existence, are somehow unsatisfactory to me. Though for opposite reasons, I find Buddhism's currently dominant modes a bit too mystical, and its texts opaque and hard to interpret, especially in light of what we know about the world and the human condition from modern science, and despite a number of neurobiological studies that persuasively show the mental benefits of meditation. Secular humanism, which I have embraced for years, suffers from the opposite problem. It is too dependent on science and a modern conception of rationality, with the result that despite the best efforts of its supporters, it comes across as cold and not the sort of thing you want to bring your kids to on a Sunday morning. Hence, I think the spectacular lack of success, numerically speaking, of secular humanist organizations. By contrast, in Stoicism, I have found a rational, science-friendly philosophy that includes a metaphysics with a spiritual dimension, is explicitly open to revision, and most importantly, is eminently practical. The Stoics accepted the scientific principle of universal causality. Everything has a cause. Causality. Causality. Everything has a cause, and everything in the universe unfolds according to natural processes. There is no room for spooky, transcendental stuff, but they also believed that the universe is structured according to what they called the logos, which can be interpreted as either God or simply what is sometimes termed Einstein's God, the simple, indubitable fact that nature is understandable by reason. Although other components of the Stoic system are important, by far the distinguishing feature of Stoicism is its practicality. It began in the guise of, and has always been understood as, a quest for a happy and meaningful life. Not surprisingly, then, its fundamental texts, pretty much all of them coming to us from the late Roman Stoa, as the Stoic school was called, since most of the early writings have been lost, are paragons of clarity. Epictetus, Seneca, Musonius, Rufus, and Marcus Aurelius speak to us in plain language, far removed from the often cryptic Buddhist texts or even the flowery allegories of early Christianity. One of my favorite questions, again from Epictetus, exemplifies this down-to-earth practicality. Death is necessary and cannot be avoided. I mean, where am I going to go to get away from it? The final reason I turn to Stoicism is that this philosophy speaks most directly and convincingly to the inevitability of death and how to prepare for it. I recently passed the half century mark, and seemingly arbitrary point in life that nonetheless prompted me to engage in broader reflections. Who am I and what am I doing? As a non religious person, I was also looking for some sort of playbook on how to prepare for the eventual end of my life. Beyond my own preoccupations, we live in a society where life keeps being extended by modern science, and more of us will consequently find ourselves needing to decide what to do with our existence for decades after retiring. Moreover, whatever we decide about the meaning of our extended lives, we also need to find ways of preparing ourselves and our loved ones to face the permanent demise of our own consciousness, of our unique presence in this world, and we need to know how to die in a dignified way that allows us to achieve tranquility of mind and is of comfort to those who survive us. We got 7 pages in. I think that was pretty good. Let's see how much further. So I could probably finish the chapter. Let me just finish it. Famously, the original Stoics devoted a great deal of effort and many writings to what Seneca referred to as the ultimate test of character and principle. We die every day, he wrote to his friend Lucius. Seneca connected this test to the rest of our existence on earth. A man cannot live well if he knows not how to die well. Life, for the Stoics, is an ongoing project, and death, its logical, natural endpoint, is nothing special in and of itself, and nothing that we should particularly fear. This view resonated with me, striking a balance as it did between opposite attitudes to which I had been exposed and which I found unpalatable. No fantasizing about an immortality of which there is neither evidence nor reason to believe in, but also no secular dismissal or worse, avoidance of the issue of death and personal extinction. For these and other reasons, I'm not alone in my quest to revive this ancient practical philosophy and adopt it to 21st century life. Every fall, thousands of people participate in Stoic Week, a worldwide philosophy event, social science experiment organized by a team at University of Exeter in England with the collaboration of academic philosophers, cognitive therapists, and everyday practitioners from all over the world. The goal of Stoic Week is twofold. On one hand, it's to get people to learn about Stoicism and the relevance to their lives. On the other hand, to collect systematic data to see whether practicing Stoicism actually makes a difference. The preliminary results from the Exeter initiative are tentative. In future Stoic Weeks, more sophisticated experimental protocols will be used and larger sample sizes collected, but they are promising. Participants in the third International Stoic Week, for instance, reported a 9% increase in positive emotions and 11% increase in negative emotions, and a 14% improvement in life satisfaction after 1 week of practice. The previous year, the team conducted a longer term follow up that confirmed the initial result for people who kept practicing. Participants also seemed to think that Stoicism makes them more virtuous. 56% gave Stoic practice a high mark in that regard. Of course, this is a self selected sample of people who have an interest in Stoicism and buy into at least some of its assumptions and practices. Then again, for people who are already somewhat committed to this particular approach, to see such significant changes in the span of a few days ought to at least encourage interested others to pay attention. Results like these are not entirely surprising, given that Stoicism in the philosophical root of a number of evidence-based philosophical therapies, including Viktor Frankl's logotherapy and Albert Elias's rational immunitive behavior therapy. Of Elias, has been said that no individual, not even Freud himself, has had a greater impact on modern psychotherapy. Frankl was a neurologist, and psychiatrist who survived the Holocaust and wrote the best-selling book Man's Search for Meaning. His moving and inspiring story of resilience can be read as a contemporary example of Stoicism in practice. Both Ellis and Frankl acknowledged Stoicism as an important influence in developing their therapeutic approaches, with Frankl characterizing logotherapy as a type of existential analysis. Another compelling account of Stoicism is provided by Vince Admiral James Stockdale in his memoir In Love and War. Stockdale famously credited Stoicism, and in particular his readings of Epictetus, for his survival under prolonged horrid conditions of the Vietnamese prisoner of war camp. Also, owing a significant debt to Stoicism is the increasingly diverse family of practices that goes under the general rubric of cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, which was initially developed to treat depression and now is more widely applied to a variety of mental cognitions. Aaron T. Beck, author of Cognitive Therapy of Depression, acknowledges this depth when he writes, "The philosophical origins of cognitive therapy can be traced back to the Stoic philosophers." Of course, Stoicism is a philosophy, not a type of therapy. The difference is crucial. A therapy is intended to be a short-term approach to helping people overcome specific problems of a psychological nature. It doesn't necessarily provide a general picture of philosophy of life. A philosophy of life is something we all need, however, and something we all develop, consciously or not. Some people simply import wholesale whatever framework for life they acquire from a religion. Others make up their own philosophy as they go along, without thinking too much about it, but nonetheless engaging in actions and decisions that reflect some implicit understanding of what life is about. Still, others would rather, as Socrates famously put, take the time to examine their life in order to live it better. Stoicism, like any life philosophy, may not appeal to or work for everyone. It is rather demanding, stipulating that moral character is the only truly worthy thing to cultivate. Health, education, and even wealth are considered preferred indifference. Although Stoics don't advocate asceticism, and many of them historically enjoyed the good things in life, such externals do not define who we are as individuals and have nothing to do with our personal worth, which depends on our character and our exercise of the virtues. In this sense, Stoicism is eminently democratic, cutting across social classes, whether you are rich, poor, healthy or sick, educated or ignorant. It makes no difference to your ability to live a moral life and thus achieve what the Stoics called ataraxia, or tranquility of mind. For all its uniqueness, Stoicism has numerous points of contact, whether other philosophies with religions and with modern movements such as secular humanism and ethical culture. There is something very appealing to me as a non-religious person in the idea of such an ecumenical philosophy, one that can share goals and at least some general attitudes with other major ethical traditions across the world. This commonality has allowed me to reject more forcefully the strident new atheism that I criticized earlier, and it also allows religious persons to distance themselves from the even more pernicious fundamentalism of different stripes that have been plaguing our recent history. To a Stoic, it's ultimately doesn't matter if we think the Logos is God or nature, as long as we recognize that a decent human life is about the cultivation of one's character and concerns for other people and even for nature itself, and is best enjoyed by way of a proper but not fanatical detachment from mere worldly goods. There are also natural challenges that remain unresolved, and which I will explore along with the reader in How to Be a Stoic. The original Stoicism, for instance, was a comprehensive philosophy that included not only ethics but also a metaphysics, a natural science, and specific approaches to logic and epistemology, that is, the theory of knowledge. The Stoics considered these other aspects of their philosophy important because they fed into and informed their main concern, how to live one's life. The idea was that in order to decide on the best approach to living, we also need to understand the nature of the world, metaphysics, how it works, natural science, and how imperfectly we come to understand it, epistemology. But many of the particular notions developed by an ancient Stoic have ceded place to new ones introduced by modern science and philosophy and need therefore to be updated. Yeah, needed an update. Alright, I don't think I'm gonna finish this chapter for y'all, but that's chapter 1. Hopefully y'all learned something. I know I did. Catch you on the next one. Beat. Honeymoon Phase, Polo Podcast. Get your money up, not your funny up. Knowledge is power. Yes, Sirski. Oh yeah, check out my website, www.honeymoonphase.me. That's .me. You'll see I got blogs. We got Spotlight. That's where we showcase favorite hip hop videos. We got reviews in the YouTube channel. Go like and subscribe, leave some comments. You know, it's going up. Honeymoon phase all year. We phasing all year. It's 2023. Valentine's Day just passed. It was a good Valentine's Day, you know. I got a little something. I got a little mug. I got a blanket, you know, some unseen before, never seen before merch. So yes, Sirski, tap in with your boy. Catch you on the next one.